So let me just ask you, as a whole, then, for the entire forum so far, what are CLSA's clients and CLSA individuals saying about the forum itself?
Yeah, well, the strategists are out there, and they're talking about lessons learned over the last year, obviously, from Lehman. And one of those that we spoke to, strategist Russell Napier, said we're going to see a slide in the S&P 500 by more than half from current levels over the long term.
We are going to have another business cycle, but the real problem, I think, is what happens to the fiscal deficit and the fiscal and the yield on treasuries in the next crisis. You see, I think the next crisis in America is really going to be driven by the emerging markets in China. Over the next few years, it seems highly likely we'll have a great credit boom in Asia and high inflation and high growth in Asia. And the next collapse in America is when they all revalue their exchange rates. That's why we're going to have another recession in America. And when they revalue the exchange rate, US government bond yields are never going back to this level. And that's the whole issue. We've known for a generation that US treasuries are mispriced by bureaucratic buying from Asia. We're dancing along the edge of this cliff. When will they pull the plug? Well, they'll pull the plug in this business cycle, many years from now, when inflation is high, and then equities will go to 400. The S&P will go to 400. If you look at some long-term valuation metrics, the reasonable number for the S&P, particularly given a government debt crisis, would be 400.
You've written in the past that most people who are investing today have learned their lessons about financial theory over 20 years or so, which have been pretty atypical and not like what we're going to be seeing in the future. So have we really learned any lessons?
No, we haven't. The only way that people and investors will learn lessons is by having a longer holding period. The fundamental flaw with finance and investment today is people have got a very short holding period. The average holding period of a US share is 7 months. If you're holding an equity for 7 months, then you can't learn, because you're trying to forecast out 7 months. You know, all that financial history tells you is you take a long-term view, make some long-term forecasts, because you've no chance of getting short-term forecasts right. So whatever we all may think we've learned, as long as we keep holding equities for such a short period of time, taking such short a view on life, then all this knowledge is wasted.
And what about the lesson that you can't have an economy in which one half of the world runs up debt to buy goods off the other half in the cheap? Have we learned that lesson?
That has definitely been learned. I mean, there's no doubt that the emerging markets have learned that. I mean, 2008, one day there'll be a history question, and it will be 50 years from now, they'll say, why is 2008 the most important year of the 21st century? Some poor child will write because it's the year of a financial crisis and fail. The right answer is, in 2008, 40% of the world's population realized you can't get rich selling to 14% of the world's population. There's only so much gearing those guys can take to buy your products. Now it's time for the 40% to start growing by itself. Now, that's the rest of the 21st century.
So that's Russell Napier, and the chief equity strategist at CLSA, Chris Wood, said much the same, that governments really haven't learned.
Mindless belief in too big to fail remains, and that's proof that nothing's been learned. And clearly, at a minimum, institutions that take government-guaranteed bank deposits should not be allowed to be engaged in risky securities business. Or, if they want to engage in that business, their bank deposit shouldn't be guaranteed by the government, and that should be made clear to the depositors.
So there's the bottom line. We've learnt almost nothing.
Well, they get to learn more from Sheryl Crow tonight, don't they? So
they do. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm sure you'll be there. That's Paul Gordon at the CLSA conference.